Unemployed and Afraid acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this episode on and of the land where you, the listener, are tuning in from. We would like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and extend our respect to any First Nations, Aboriginal, and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, acknowledging that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building brands, businesses, and a career you love with the people who've done it. I'm your host, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into today's story of starting over. Welcome to the Social Stories episode, where each week our community of business builders share stories of key moments and evolutions within their own business building. This week's question to the crowd was an epic one, actually a bit of a risk by me, as I could have had absolute crickets in the DMs and just be filling your ears with my stories and ramblings. But there were some brave people out there willing to lift the lid in support of others, and I'm so here for it. So our question this week was, how did you finance your business? Naturally, depending on your personal circumstance and business needs, product needs, there's going to be just so many different options and answers and different things happening out there. Totally self-funded with X amount invested, an investor, multiple investors, a business partner, securing loans, and naturally the amount's going to differ greatly. And it's for that reason alone that I thought this was just a great question to ask, because there's so much we don't realize, so much we don't know when we see people's businesses from the outside. And it can really limit us in getting started with the unknown. We kind of talk ourselves out of it. I could never do something like that. Becomes just another excuse to not scale up or not start anything at all. Whenever I can, I will share with you my own small business venture stories. So in this instance, I have been totally self-funded throughout the journey. I bought a beauty salon when I was 19. That was my first business. True story. It was the mid-noughties. It cost me about 5K from memory. Long story short, that did not end well. Perhaps that's an option for a future episode. I can tell you all about that glorious experience, but it was the taste of entrepreneurship that has fueled my other adventures. And shortly after that, I started a personal shopping business. Yeah, that was random. In my early 20s, very low cost as service-based. I think I invested maybe $1,000 into a website and a logo creation. Gave it a go for a while, but lost a love for it. It was an idea I thought could be a bit of fun, but it just wasn't for me. So I closed that all down and went on the corporate career journey for over a decade. Cut to my ceramics business. So recently closed down, but when I started, I was pretty heavy on the OPEX, as you can imagine. So over 15K spent on the setup, cleaning my kiln, the clays, the glazes, all sorts of things like that. So, and that had quite a high ongoing cost. That was all self-funded as well, and used whatever I could to go back into the business as I kept growing. And of course, there's this podcast, no surprises there. That's also self-funded with minimal investment, except for a few pieces of gear, some software, and an extraordinary amount of time. So that's been my business journey financially to date. And I will happily share again in my other ventures as they grow and evolve, because I don't think this should be the last time that this question gets asked in the Social Stories episode. It's a really important thing to talk about. So I don't think this will be the last time we'll be hearing about how this aspect is tackled for others. It's a great exercise to lift the lid on the money stuff, as we all have to deal with it, the scale, the options. So let's make it a little less weird to talk about. Now, I am still going to talk for a minute though, because I have some entries that have come into my DMs, and I'm going to be reading some of them out. We've got various voice things and stuff like that going on. So you get to hear my voice a little bit more than normal in this episode. This first entry that I'm going to read to you is an anonymous entry. This is a product-based business, and this is what they said. We started with 2K. We bought 200 units. Then what we sold, we put back into stock. We have done this process for over 12 months and never borrowed a cent. We then introduced new product that was 180K upfront costs, which we borrowed against our house. We are currently paying this back with every profit we make going back into stock and expenses. The next stage for us is the bank.
What a generous share, and so interesting to hear about the scale up when you're introducing a new product, what might actually be required upfront. Naturally, there's going to be a lot more detail to that behind the scenes, but it's just so great to learn that. Our next entry into the DMs is not anonymous. It's the wonderful Grace and Marie, who do luxury home fragrance, candles, diffusers, and sprays. And this is what they said. Completely self-funded in the beginning. As the orders rolled in, any money that came through then went straight back into the business. This will be my 6th year in business, and I am still yet to take a single dollar to pay myself or anything outside of the business. At one stage in the very beginning, my parents, quote unquote, invested $3,000 to help me get off the ground a little bit more when I started to get bigger, which I'm incredibly grateful for. Such an incredible lesson in not getting paid. I think we hear that from quite a lot of people, that just setting the reality that the business needs to fund itself. It goes back in. We're not necessarily going to be drawing wages, that we need to look at other ways to be able to sustain ourselves through this business building. It's not the case for everybody, but the case for so many. And the last entry that I'm going to read out is from the wonderful Vanessa Richardson. Vanessa is a beautiful artist, and I found this entry so interesting for a number of reasons, but I think you'll hear why. Vanessa said, I love that question. I get asked this one a lot because, quote unquote, being an artist comes with a certain level of financial stigma. I'm completely self-funded, never had a business loan or credit card, and frugal living. Is it a need or a want? It's especially important starting out. I started out working on a rule of thirds with any sales: a third for me, wages, a third back into the business for the purchase of supplies to produce more work, increase stock, and a third back to grow the business. So running costs, advertising, market stall fees, and running the business. That does shift over time and you become a bit more relaxed about it, but it's actually still quite accurate when I look at the numbers on paper at the end of the financial year. I've never measured success or business success by the dollar value. If I was working a 38-hour week for someone else in an average job, I'd be making the equivalent in dollars. What a really great point. It's just a really great way to quantify these earnings and how these things can come in. Vanessa continued on with a few more pieces of insight I thought really wonderful to share. That it might just help someone starting out to look at things with business eyes, which is a bit clinical, rather than with a creative heart, which can often be the case in that artist space. Vanessa has had both ends of the financial stigma that, wow, how do you survive on selling your art? The response in her head, as she says, is something like, because my expectations of dollar value or definition on success are probably different than most humans. Or on the other end, you must be doing well to survive from selling your art. And sometimes comment on the price. I mean, look, I think we do this a lot, don't we? We start to count other people's money a little bit, but there's just, you cannot see the whole picture in there. And she goes on to say, I'm a successful artist because I work from home and I'm doing what I love. I don't need to make millions. I want to be comfortable. I spent 30 years perfecting my technique and building up my skill level. And if we do a quick calculation, that's $4,000 for a painting, less $500 for professional framing, $3,500 to Vanessa, and it took 150 hours to paint. It's $23 an hour. Again, the business success is also finding your niche market, those who see the value and passion in your work and want to invest in the energy that you put in. What a brilliant share by you, Vanessa. I just think that's so incredibly important. Let's give my voice a rest and hear from some fabulous humans. I am going to kick off with the wonderful Sky from Bobby Seaford. Bobby Seaford's a beautiful homewares brand, and this is the share she had for us.
Hey Kim, it's Sky here. Love your social stories question this week because it's something that really isn't spoken about enough, and the funding, the beginning stages and the funding really do shape the trajectory of those first few years in business. So I'm happy to share mine, but basically with Bobby Seaford, we bootstrapped and we self-funded. So we started out really slowly selling on free platforms. That was literally Gumtree and Marketplace. Obviously we didn't have to pay to use those, and as sales came in, we then could put money into printing some more prints. So my partner was painting at the time, and as he painted, we'd sort of scan them in to the computer and create our prints. So yeah, from there we would print on demand. And this was our minimum viable product. So it didn't cost us a lot to produce. At that point, we were doing digital prints versus archival prints. And from there, once we'd seen some traction happen with our products, we thought, let's just open an Instagram and actually start a brand. So we were selling through our DMs. Again, no money, just time being put into it. And from there, once our DMs became too much to manage, we decided to move across to Shopify and open a website. And obviously, opening a website is a big plunge because you're putting money into something consistently every month. So we waited until we felt comfortable to do that. When you want to expand your business, that in the early days, that can bring about some more questions of, okay, how are we going to do this? And in our case, we wanted to progress the brand and increase our product range. So we decided to put our fish prints onto linen as a linen collection. Linen making costs are high, and the material itself, the cost is high again. So we did a pre-sale model. There wasn't enough margin in the prints to basically fulfill the costs needed to drop an entire new linen range. So we did the pre-sale model for probably a good year and a half, and it's only this year that we are now starting to offer our linen products constantly on our website. But obviously, if you're self-funding, you're pretty well aware of how you don't want to be causing stress. So this is why we've done it the slow way, and it's really suited us at our stage in life with a young family. It's been, minimal pressure. We're at the point now where Bobby Seaford does fund itself, and that's a fantastic feeling. But yeah, we definitely recommend just going slow, testing those minimal viable products, not feeling that you have to pay to sell to begin with. Just test, see what people are loving, and from there just build slowly.
My new favorite acronym, MVP, minimum viable product. How can you get something to market in its minimal form, taking any aspect of what you think it's supposed to look like out of the picture? How can you just get something to market so that you can test and learn? Such a valuable piece of insight. Thank you so much, Sky. Our next share is from Bonnie, who is an author, and I'll let Bonnie tell you her story.
Howdy, Kim. My name is Bonnie Robertson, and I'm replying to this week's question. I'm still a baby in the business industry, but I'm self-publishing my own books, and I've always relied on pre-orders, which can feel very frustrating, and I'm actually going through it right now too, with the second book launch I've done. But with my first one, I've relied on pre-orders too, and it worked well. I could order my first stock with that too. I did it slightly different this time, with limiting the copies basically for people to order. I didn't do that the first time. You always learn. Yeah, that's basically how I financed my business, quote unquote.
Bonnie, absolutely making it happen. And at 18 too. I mean, so much love for that. And self-publishing, as a side note, I love it because you're not waiting for someone else to pluck you out and invest in you. You're investing in yourself and putting your work and your art out into the world, growing and learning from it and going again. It's hugely inspiring stuff. And to close this episode, I have a series of voice notes for you from Alex Nash, who is an entrepreneur who is going to give us a little bit of insight into both sides of the coin. So personal experience and a little bit of understanding, a little bit of experience in the investor space, how some aspects of this work. And I'll tag Alex's details in the show notes as well if you'd like to connect and discuss this a little bit more. So joining us all the way from Sweden, here is Alex.
Hi, darling. It's an interesting question, and I'll just say a little bit about my experience. So I ran and started a couple of businesses, or a few businesses. One that was a 7-figure business. We grew organically the whole time, and the benefit of that was that we had full control over everything. So regardless if the outside financial world or whatever was happening, we were in control of our situation. Obviously, we couldn't grow as fast as someone that takes in external capital, but we managed to grow in a good way. And then the years that we did well, we could pull out quite a big chunk of profits from the business, with lower tax. I'm sure it's different. Of course, it's different in different countries. This is in Sweden. And I have to say that business was probably the one that was the most pleasurable to live in, to work in. I sold that business in 2017 though. Then I had another business that I started like 2016 where we mainly grew organically, but we also took in some money from the triple Fs, friends, fools and family. And that went well. Like it made us start up because it was a product-based business. It made us be able to start up because it was a lot of initial investment. However, when we sold that business in 2020, it was a little bit, how would I say, like a little bit uncomfortable because what value they had put in money and then what value they were going to get out of get out with the sale. And my lesson from that is that as tempting as and nice it is to take in friends, families and fools in the beginning, especially friends and families, I don't think I would ever let anyone that I really like invest in my business again, because it just isn't worth it, because to a certain extent you're not really in control what will happen with it all. So that is that experience. And then let's get to my third. My most recent one, it went from a startup to a scale up really quickly, and the most important thing here was to gain a lot of market quickly, because it's a concept that could be easily duplicated. So here the whole thing was to go really fast to market, which meant we had to take in capital, otherwise you wouldn't be able to grow at that rate. So that was really good because we took a big market share. However, it's ended in a lot of problems. I am not one of the founders of these companies. I came in later, but the two founders are having big problems, and the two founders want to separate. And because they took in external capital, they took that into a valuation that's obviously much higher, because the valuation is a prediction of the future. It's much higher than the value actually is right now, which means it's virtually impossible to buy each other out because it's so much money. So now this company, we're actually in court. Well, I'm not in court, but I'm trying to help them navigate court because they don't know how to get out of it. So those are my three experiences. And just a little bit about me. So I've been an entrepreneur since 2008. And I've been doing my own advising and board assessments and business coaching off and on since then, but I've never actually gone out publicly. I've just been, working based on recommendation. And now I'm kind of tempted to start having to actually show up as myself and my own brand and that kind of stuff. So I'm in the middle of kind of branding myself and whatsoever. But but right now I'm actually employed. So I'm helping startups and scale-ups sustainably grow. And what we do there is we also lend out money. So I'm involved in lending out money, which is something I actually didn't touch because it's nothing I've done personally, lend money from a financial institution. There are loads of institutions to borrow money from, and sometimes there are other ones that will take more risks than the bank, or they might enter into a loan together with the bank. The interest rates are generally higher, however, they are willing to take more risks, so it's definitely an option. And the benefit of taking a loan is you obviously don't have to give up any power of your company. So I think that is a good way to do it as well. The last thing I want to mention though is soft money. There is a lot of soft money that startups especially don't take advantage of. And since I'm in Sweden, I try to often advise companies to look at EU funds. There's a lot of EU funds, like small business grants, like all this money that you can get access to for free if you just send in an application. And especially if you have a business idea that might, support minorities or support the environment or support women or something like that. All right, that's my too many cents and too much space in your inbox. I hope it gives you something for your question, and I hope you have a lovely day. Bye.
I feel like after hearing that share from Alex, there's space for a third weekly episode, getting some experts on the show to give us all a little bit more insight and advice into some of these key areas. So whilst time is something that really needs to be invested into business, is not something I have right now to do it, let me put it on my to-do list. And I think that we could all get a lot of value from that. If we're in business, it's likely costing us something. Likely financial, but also, as I said, time. But that financial investment needs to come from somewhere. So let's keep this dialogue open around money. Shake off the financial weirdness. We all have to start somewhere. We all scale up from somewhere. We all use different options. And your story could help the next business owner create something that maybe you'll love. I hope you found today's social stories helpful for your business building. Make sure you're following Unemployed and Afraid on Instagram. It's at Unemployed and Afraid to find out next week's question. And if you're building a business and if you're finding this helpful, drop your voice note answers to the question next week to be part of the next show and part of the community of business building humans doing brave things. I look forward to seeing you in the DMs. Actually, one final thing from me. Once you have connected with us on Instagram at Unemployed and Afraid, go search for us on Facebook. So there's a private Facebook group, Unemployed and Afraid. Click to join. We're going to keep the conversation going over there, get more real, get more involved in the story, and help each other out on this journey with the no bullshit approach that is the personal stories of business building. I will see you over there.
Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the stories of starting over with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review, and of course, join the community on Instagram and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid. See you there.